Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us today for REIX's 30th anniversary virtual event. We will be starting shortly. If you have any questions or are having technical difficulties, please send a message to technical support in the chat feature or email rex@buxa.com. Good morning, everyone. We're just a couple of minutes away from starting. I'd like to thank you for joining us today for REIX's 30th anniversary event. We'll be starting shortly, as I mentioned. If you have any questions or you're having technical difficulties at all, please send a message to technical support in the chat feature or email rex@buxa.com. Thank you. Good morning, everyone, and welcome to REIX's 30th anniversary virtual event. My name is Lisa Sabo. I'm the CEO of REIX, and I will be your MC for today's event. We've planned this event as an opportunity for REIX to give back to all of you, our subscribers. We thank those of you who have taken the time out of your busy day today to join us. We're hoping the event is both an enjoyable and fun learning experience for you. Before we get started, I have a few housekeeping items and instructions. First of all, please note that parts of the webinar are being recorded. Tracy Brown's keynote presentation will not be recorded. The recorded sections will be shared on REIX's website following the webinar. The webinar is interactive, so to fully participate and have more fun, we encourage you to connect via a laptop or desktop. If you have connected using audio only and you are able to, please take a moment to connect on a computer. Again, if you're experiencing any issues, please email rex@buxa.com or message technical support in the chat feature, and an event organizer will assist you. To submit questions throughout the presentations, please use the Q&A feature. Questions will be addressed following the presentation in each section. Use the chat feature to interact with other attendees. When using the chat feature, be mindful though if you're sending to everyone or to an individual. I'll briefly go over today's agenda, and then I'll turn the stage over to Sheldon Johnston, our advisory board chair, who will make a few opening remarks, followed by best wishes from Rika and Area. Following that, we'll dive into today's events. The first part will be a very short 30-year history of REIX. That may not sound exciting, but we encourage you to pay attention as there will be a few quiz questions and prizes afterwards. The next part of our event will be a presentation by Dave Delarond on why it is important to be truthful when you're dealing with REIX, as the consequences can be harsh if you're not. After Dave's presentation, there will be an opportunity to ask him some questions. We'll have a short pause when Dave is finished, and then our keynote speaker, Tracy Brown, will begin her dynamic presentation, identifying when people are not being truthful. Tracy's presentation will provide you with tools that you'll be able to use both personally and professionally. That's the overview. Before I hand it over to Sheldon, I'm very happy to bring your attention to a short video from our Minister of Service Alberta, Nate Glubish. Nate Glubish was first elected as MLA for Strathcona Sherwood Park on April 16, 2019. And after being invited to serve as a member of cabinet, was sworn into the office of Minister of Service Alberta on April 30th, 2019. Prior to his election to government, Minister Glubish spent 15 years as a venture capital investor, where he invested in and helped build dozens of Alberta-based technology companies. Since his election, he has been working to find ways that government can harness technology in order to provide better public services at a better cost and higher value to Albertans. As an Edmonton MLA, Minister Glubish has been working to build stronger relationships with communities and all levels of government across the capital region. Please watch this short video.
Good morning, everyone, and thank you to the Real Estate Insurance Exchange for inviting me to participate today in your 30th anniversary celebration. On behalf of the Government of Alberta, I would like to congratulate you on 30 successful years of providing insurance coverage to Alberta's real estate industry. For Alberta's economy to thrive, we need a strong real estate industry, and everyone who is a part of the Real Estate Insurance Exchange plays an important role in achieving that goal. For the last 30 years, REIX has been vital in supporting Alberta's robust real estate market. Your work provides real estate practitioners with the confidence they need to do their jobs with professionalism and integrity, and to act in the best interests of Alberta consumers. Consumer trust and confidence, they're crucial in any type of business, but especially in a large investment like real estate. The work you do not only supports real estate professionals, but also supports Alberta consumers as they make major financial decisions that impact their everyday lives. It is no secret that Alberta's real estate market has had to work hard to overcome its share of challenges, especially over the last 2 years. Alberta and the rest of the world have faced unprecedented economic challenges as a result of COVID-19. The pandemic has touched every sector of our economy and continues to do so, which is evident in the virtual nature of this event today. We have been forced to live, work, and meet with each other a little differently, and I'd like to just take a moment to thank all of you for continuing to do your part to keep each other safe and healthy by holding this event virtually. I know that we are all looking forward to getting to the other side of this, returning to normal, and getting Alberta's economy back on track. And one way that we can achieve that is to make sure that the individuals in the real estate industry have the tools they need to be successful and to continue to navigate the challenges they face on a day-to-day basis. For example, last year we made important changes that revamped the real estate regulator. We brought in a new governance structure for the Real Estate Council of Alberta that ensures more transparency and focuses the regulator on the things that matter most to the licensees in the industry and to the consumers in that industry. The Real Estate Insurance Exchange was involved in that process. Your representatives asked questions, shared ideas, and worked with my office and with Service Alberta officials to get us to where we are today. And so thank you again for your help in getting those changes brought forward to strengthen this important industry. You have helped to ensure that Alberta's real estate regulator remains strong and allows for the industry to continue to grow. As we head into the fall, I am looking forward to seeing Alberta's real estate industry continue to be a leader in supporting the province's economic recovery. I'm always open to discussing different ways that Alberta's government can support your work. For the last 30 years, you have supported a vibrant, growing real estate market in Alberta, and I am committed to working with you to ensure it stays that way. Your work is important and appreciated, especially in such challenging times. Thank you again for inviting me to provide these opening remarks on behalf of the Government of Alberta. I hope you enjoy the rest of your celebration.
Thank you to Minister Glubish for sharing those welcome remarks. I would now like to invite Sheldon Johnston, REIX's Advisory Board Chair, to the virtual stage. Over to you, Sheldon.
Thank you, Lisa. Hello and welcome from the entire advisory board. I'm extremely honored to be the chair for the 30th anniversary celebration. I'd like to take a quick moment to thank all of the volunteers from Saskatchewan and Alberta who have contributed to the success of your errors and emissions insurance program. Without their contributions, this program would not be the success it is today. You might not know this, but 30 years ago, it wasn't a certainty that REIX would be formed. Thanks to people like Merv Borgeson, Harvey Gamble, Peter Kelly, and Del Svensson that stuck with it to create REIX, what has truly become a North American real estate and insurance success story. Built on a commitment to defend you and provide exceptional value, the advisory board was pleased to be in a position this year to maintain your premium at $175 per year for the third year in a row. The board has also approved additional education initiatives, as well as enhancements to our risk management support. We also approved waiving the deductible for anyone who has been claims-free for the past 5 years. Not only would a commercial market insurer have raised fees, they certainly wouldn't have invested in the education of its subscribers like REIX has and will continue to do. Nor would they provide the robust early intervention services that help to mitigate adverse outcomes. And waive the deductible? Never. Anyways, it's time to get this show on the road. But first, we'll hear a message from Christy Kruger, the chair of the Alberta Real Estate Association, and Patty McLeod, the chair of the Real Estate Council of Alberta.
My name is Christy Kruger, and I chair the Alberta Real Estate Association. And we would like to send you a very happy 30th anniversary wish from all of us at AREA. And we would also like to express our gratitude. The importance of the work that you guys do means so much for the members across the province. Thank you. Enjoy your virtual event, and we can't wait to see you again in person.
Hello, everyone. First, let me say I'm so honored to have been invited to this event and to underscore the important work that REIX does on behalf of the industry. For those of you I haven't met yet, my name is Patricia McLeod, and I'm the board chair of the Real Estate Council of Alberta, a role I've had since I was appointed by the Minister of Service Alberta in December of 2020. I've been a lawyer in Alberta since 1996, and I've served on numerous boards over the course of my career. I am currently the board chair of Calgary Co-op, and as a member of the boards of Alberta Innovates and the Green Line. I was excited to take on this role because, as you know, the real estate industry is exciting and it's always changing. And as a lawyer by trade, I personally find the self-regulation aspect of Alberta's real estate industry to be very fascinating. Self-regulation in the real estate industry is not something that every Canadian province has. Alberta is very fortunate to have these two established bodies to keep the industry in check and provide coverage that gives peace of mind to subscribers and eases consumer worries. At the very core of both RECA and REIX's self-regulatory and self-insurance roles is the accountability and integrity of an industry. While our toolboxes are different, RECA and REIX have a shared goal of reducing harm within the industry and to consumers. Consumer protection is at the heart of RECA's mandate, and a huge part of this is the errors and omissions coverage provided by REIX. This notion of self-insurance allows the industry to control its own destiny and become involved and empowered in improving the industry. This empowerment is so important, and it's what humbles me in working so closely with licensees and the REIX Advisory Board over the last 9 months. Industry has really stepped up to the plate, and I see how much hard work it takes to make decisions that are in the best interests of everyone. One person who exemplifies this is Bill Briggs, who the RECA board appointed to the REIX Advisory Board. Bill works on the RECA board and is also a REIX subscriber himself. If you've met him, you know how committed he is to the industry, and I'm very grateful for the wealth of industry knowledge and experience he brings to our board table. And speaking of RECA's board, as some of you know, RECA's governance structure has undergone some pretty major changes in the past year. The two main changes I'd like to mention are the new structure has 40% consumer representation, whereas the previous council only had 17%. And by establishing sector-based industry councils, each area within the industry now has more direct control over how that sector and its licensees are regulated. These changes go back to enhance consumer protection and empowerment of the industry to make good decisions. Both of these aspects are fundamental in maintaining the integrity of the industry. I recognize RECA and the industry took a long road to get to where we are now. And I also recognize throughout the times of uncertain governance in RECA, REIX continued to do what it does best. So with that said, I'd like to acknowledge the tremendous milestone of reaching 30 years of providing continuous coverage for the industry and that the consumers need in Alberta. My sincerest congratulations to REIX, its advisory board, and industry subscribers for all that you've learned and achieved. And here's to 30 more.
Thank you, Patty, and thank you, Christy. I hope you all will enjoy today's program and find some useful tools to incorporate into your daily, professional, and personal lives. Up next is a short video on the history of REIX. Make sure to pay attention. There will be some questions and a chance to win prizes afterwards.
Hello everyone, and welcome to a brief 30-year history of REIX. In the past 30 years, REIX has had 3 CEOs. I'm here with Merv Borgeson, who was REIX's first CEO from 1991 to 2005, and Harvey Gamble, who served as CEO from 2005 to 2018. Having had the opportunity to work with Harvey and talk with Merv, I'm so proud to be part of REIX, which has truly been a success story of what the industry coming together can accomplish. Industry members and visionaries created REIX. Industry members and their performance have made this a success story. Thankfully, our predecessors took a gamble, which we're celebrating 30 years later. For people who weren't around back then, insurance in the real estate industry was nothing like it is today. Merv, could you please tell us a bit about what things were like back in the late 80s?
Thank you, Lisa. 30 years, unbelievable. Premiums in the commercial insurance marketplace were expensive, and E&O insurance was scarce, particularly for the real estate industry. Many brokers, or some brokers, had it, others did not. And this was a big risk. If licensees were sued by a client, it meant their commissions went to defend the lawsuit and perhaps more, and a greater risk for the consumer if the loss was greater.
Sounds like a potential disaster was looming. What was the main driver of change?
In my mind, the risk was quite real, but the industry was perhaps not quite as worried in terms of solving their own problems in-house was their choice. Consumers were beginning to complain more to the superintendent of real estate. The superintendent basically gave us, the industry, a year or so to resolve the problem.
Harvey, how did the industry organize for change?
Well, we saw and monitored what was happening at other jurisdictions, and even with other professions, they were struggling with the same issues. And we saw that self-insurance programs were emerging to solve the problem. AREA had an insurance committee at that time that was looking at some solutions. Dan Russell, Dave Crawford, and Del Svensson were key players. They contacted an insurance consultant from Vancouver, Peter Kelly, and he had assisted British Columbia with coming up with their program just a year or two before that. And actually, Peter Kelly is still advising REIX to this day, 30 years later. Merv had just completed his term as president of CREA. And so he was approached by AREA to be the project manager because they had noted that he had a background in insurance and real estate that he could put into this. So with that deadline looming, discussions began in earnest in March of 1990. The goal was to create REIX, that is the Alberta Real Estate Insurance Exchange, and make it a self-insurance program, and to have it up and running by October of 1990. As it turned out, that was way too short a time to put a program like this together. So they got some more time, and as things turned out, that was very fortuitous because what they put together in the end was a much better program and a far superior product.
Looking at it from today's lens, a self-insurance program seems so obvious, but it was not obvious at all 30 years ago. Merv, could you tell us a bit about what it was like to get the industry's buy-in for creating a self-insurance program?
Growing pains seem to be the theme, if you will. The industry an industry survey really needed to be done to see how big a problem this whole issue was. So there was a desire to solve the problems. There was a desire to keep the government perhaps out of the picture as much as possible. Realistically, a lot of the industry didn't see the need to necessarily carry insurance. So we really needed to determine the level of risk that really was out there. So Peter and Kelly, as a project, went on the road show to visit various brokerages, real estate boards, speak to agents, and to measure the industry's support for the concept. Perhaps a self-insurance program, like Harvey has mentioned, designed for the real estate practitioner versus buying something off the shelf, for example, of an insurance company, which weren't necessarily unique to the needs of an everyday practitioner. So we felt comfortable. We had no idea and were significantly surprised by the resistance that did await us out there. The industry really wasn't ready to accept and perhaps vote on this step. So the program was delayed. And when I think back, March to September 1990, to deal with regulations, the practical aspect was definitely too short a time.
Seems like you were down but not out. Merv, how did you get from there to here?
At that time, we decided to give it a rest and then tackle it one more time to make sure the industry really understood what we were trying to do. Personally, I felt we could and we needed to do more to explain self-insurance versus, say, commercial. Peter Kelly and Harvey Gamble, Janet Russell, our legal counsel, and I met to develop a strategy. And our vision basically went down this path, that we should set up, or we could set up, an independent organization where you report claims or incidents. We would open a file. We would defend the practitioner, the broker, agent. We would be a source of risk management for agents' education, and that would be through area. And an independent advisory board, a governance group made up of industry members, overlooking the program, setting up policies, and giving direction. Personally, the real estate board and brokerage visits, my message was, what is a real estate professional? Agents, in some cases, are advertising themselves as real estate professionals. We better be able to stand up then if we call ourselves a professional like other industries. We talked about practical ways to mitigate potential errors, and that brokers needed to be more involved in the quality people they hired, supervision, and training to make sure they were well equipped to do the best service for their clients, and ultimately to protect clients beyond just making the sale. Fortunately, a year later, October 1st, 1991, REIX was born. Harvey and Dell were on the first board. And I would like to especially thank Peter Kelly, legal counsel Janet Russell, and the industry members as a whole, as well as the government of the day, for being willing to allow the real estate industry of Alberta to take on this challenge.
So the real estate industry in Alberta came together in 1991 to create REIX. REIX's limits started off at $100,000. I understand that those were raised in 2003 to the $1 million that we have today. Two very important parts of REIX's history happened in 2005. Harvey, I understand that Merv's vision for Saskatchewan joining the program happened just as you became CEO.
Well, during my years as a broker, I had the opportunity to serve on the very first advisory board. And then in 2005, I became CEO when Merv retired. This was the same year that Saskatchewan joined. In fact, it was almost the same day that Saskatchewan joined the program. So REIX, meaning Alberta Real Estate Insurance Exchange, became REIX, the Real Estate Insurance Exchange. I'm grateful, really am, to have been a part of creating REIX, serving on the board, and all those years as CEO.
Thank you, Merv and Harvey, for taking the time to share a bit of history of REIX. And a big thank you to the other visionaries of the day, like Dan Russell, Dave Crawford, and Dale Svensson, for making this happen. REIX has operated with a small, dedicated staff, some of whom are also celebrating important milestones this year. In 2001, Heather Appleby, our accounting coordinator, joined REIX. This is her 20th anniversary. Dave Delarond was hired by Harvey in 2006, and it's his 15th anniversary. In 2018, I became the third CEO, having the honor of taking the reins from two amazing previous CEOs. We are proud to say, due to effective board oversight and dedicated professional staff, REIX continues to be in a very strong financial position. Our focus is not on profit, it is on what is best for our subscribers. Since 1991, REIX has been here to defend you and be a key source of risk management education for the industry. In closing, on behalf of REIX, we congratulate the industry. Because of your professionalism, claims are down, events are up, and that means less lawsuits, and that helps keep the premiums at the incredibly modest level that they're at. Thank you. It really was an honor for me to work with Merv and Harvey in creating that history video. I hope you were paying attention, because I would now like to welcome Aaron and Nathan to join me in the virtual stage to moderate the interactive quiz. Nathan D'Souza is the Claims and Litigation Advisor at REIX, and Aaron Ling is our Governance Specialist and REIX's Office Manager. Welcome, Aaron and Nathan.
Hello, everyone. And thank you, Lisa, for sharing that great discussion and hearing and learning about REIX's great history. I'll quickly turn it over to Nathan.
Thanks, Aaron. So as Lisa mentioned, we are hosting a short game show, and to keep things exciting, we do have some prizes. So I hope you were all paying attention. There are going to be 5 questions. Answer the most questions correctly, and you'll be entered into a chance to win one of 5 prizes. Each winner will receive access to Tracy's online training, fraud spotting, online deception detection training, an online copy of her book, How to Detect Lies, Fraud, and Identity Theft, field guide, and a $200 gift card to a local restaurant of your choice. Doesn't that sound exciting?
It sure does. Food and learning always goes hand in hand, I think. It's a great combination.
Absolutely.
Okay, so here's how the game show is going to work. On your screen, you'll see a pop-up question. On the screen there, you'll also see several different choices. Once you select your choice and click submit, everyone will have 10 seconds to answer. At the end of the question, we'll review the final answer.
Great, so let's take a look at the first question. According to the video, which provinces are part of REIX? Alberta only, BC and Ontario, Saskatchewan and PEI, Alberta and Saskatchewan, or none of the above?
No, that's interesting, Nathan. It's missing all the above too.
Yeah, that's true. Most multiple choice questions usually have all the above as an answer.
Yeah, that's one of my favorites because honestly, you can never go wrong with all the above, right? So,
all right, I think that's enough time. Let's look at the results. So for those of you who selected Alberta and Saskatchewan, you are correct. Awesome, so let's move on to the next question.
Okay, question number 2. In what year were REIX policy limits raised from $100,000 to $1 million? Was it in 2020, 1991, 2003, or 2005? Speaking of $1 million, Nathan, what would you do if you had $1 million?
If I had $1 million, I'd be rich, just like that Bare Naked Lady song.
Oh, it's a great choice, great choice. Okay, I think that should be enough time. Let's see the final results. And for those who chose 2003, you are correct. Question number 3.
So what year did Saskatchewan join the Alberta Real Estate Insurance Exchange Insurance Program? 1991, 2000, they didn't, or 2005?
You know, looking at those past years, Nathan, I'm just curious, what were you doing in those years?
Oh man, well, I wasn't even born in 1991, but in 2005, I was in school. How about you?
1991, I was in grade 4, 2000s finishing high school, and 2005, I was finishing university. So very educational focus.
Nice. All right, I think that's enough time. Let's look at the results. So the correct answer is 2005. So congrats to those who chose that answer. Let's look at the next question.
Hey, question number 4. How long has Dave Delaron been with REIX? 32 years, 15 years, 10 years, or 12 years?
Man, Dave's been here a long time, eh?
Yeah, he sure has.
Yeah, definitely an important part of REIX and
Mhm.
great resource for sure. How long have you been here, Aaron?
Looking at the answers, it's definitely none of the above. And if we had all the above, it's neither that either. I've been with REIX for just a little over 2 years now.
That's awesome. All right, let's take a look at the results. So for those of you who selected 15 years, that is correct. All right, time for the last question. How many CEOs have there been in the past 30 years? 1, 2, 7, or 3? So this is the last question, so I hope you were all paying attention in the video. And what a great video that was.
Totally agree.
All right, so I think that's enough time. I hope you guys all got your answers in. Let's check the results. So the correct answer is 3. So congrats to everyone who chose that answer. And that's it for the quiz. So thank you all for participating. We have recorded everyone's answers to do a random draw from the attendees with the most correct answers. The prize winners will be announced at the close of the event. We will be contacting the winners by email after the event to claim their prize. We hope you enjoyed the game and thank you again for participating. We'd like to welcome back Lisa on stage to introduce our next speaker. Over to you, Lisa.
Thanks, Aaron and Nathan. You did a very good job moderating the quiz. I hope everyone enjoyed our short history presentation and the quiz. I would now like to introduce Dave Delaron, Senior Vice President of Claims and Litigation, for a presentation on the truthfulness file. Dave's presentations are always very interesting and educational. Don't forget to submit questions using the Q&A feature. Dave will answer those at the end of his presentation. Over to you, Dave.
Thanks, Lisa. Good morning, everybody. What I'm going to talk about this morning is the risks of lying and the importance of credibility and truthfulness when it comes to REIX coverage. Because as I often say, we're only as good as the information we're being given by our industry members in terms of being able to defend you adequately in a subsequent court of law. I don't want anybody to be under the misconception that just because people are under oath in a trial, they don't lie. The simple fact of the matter is they do. The greatest majority of the litigation that we deal with, by and large, involves buyers. And whether it's a misstatement, whether it's glossing over a fact, or whether it's a downright lie, is in so many cases the most difficult part of an investigation. You'll recall I just said most. There are exceptions to that, and to illustrate the importance of being truthful and thus being credible, I think it's important to share with you a case that we had a number of years ago, which I think illustrates this really, really well. This was a country residential transaction, and it was quite a large piece of property that was being offered for sale. The intent of this sale was to subdivide and thus create a whole subdivision out of this parcel. The purchase price was $1.4 million, and the buyer came along and made it subject to 3 conditions: a well water report, a home inspection, because it was the intent of the buyer to live in this residence while subdivision plans went through for final approval. And finally, it was subject to a review of all the existing subdivision documents that had taken place throughout this process. It was subject to a $50,000 deposit. Once the contract had been accepted, the buyer accepted the contract. the seller accepted the contract, the buyer provided the $50,000 deposit and subsequently waived conditions. 9 days after the deposit was provided, the check bounced. And so that gave rise to the buyer suing the seller. And at this point, the insured had not been named and was not a part of the action. In Alberta, under current provincial court rules, part of the procedure is a mandatory pretrial conference. And for those folks that don't know what that is, it's a case where all of the parties to the litigation in an informal setting get together with the judge. They tell the judge their side of the story. And if you pull a strong judge, more often than not, the judge will say, look, if I were hearing this case, this is probably the way that I would rule. So we're not a part of that process because we're not a party to the lawsuit. But what we learned after the fact was during the pretrial, the buyer came out and said that his girlfriend had absconded with all the corporate funds, and the police were involved, and he had no idea where she was. As the pretrial process went on, the story then changed, and he was no longer saying that, but rather what he was saying was that he didn't get all of the documents and material relative to creating the subdivision. And that was the reason that he decided that he wasn't going to have his bank transfer sufficient funds from one account to the other to cover the check. So we've already had 2 stories out of this individual in the space of an hour and a half. He further went on to say that as far as he was concerned, the insured had been negligent in the provision of the subdivision documents, and as a result, he was going to amend his pleadings and asked the judge for permission to do so. The judge granted that permission and gave him a window of 20 days to do it. Shortly thereafter, we received a call from the insured who told us that he had been sued by the buyer. And we immediately got our hands on the pleadings and noted that the pleadings now asserted forgery. That gave rise to obviously a whole lot of red flags on our part. But given the changing story of the buyer, we decided that we were going to focus our investigation on the buyer's credibility first. We've long since learned that pleadings say a lot of things that aren't necessarily true. And we started taking a look at this buyer. Our investigations concluded that he was a somewhat unsavory character. And coupled with his changing story at the original pretrial, we felt that we should request a further pretrial. And we did so, and the court granted that. I attended at that pretrial. The insured did not attend. In Calgary, we attend all the pretrials without the insured. The judges seem to prefer that. And the other reason that we like it is it takes the emotion out of the proceeding. So it was the pretrial was more than a little bit interesting at first when this issue of the forgery came out, and we said that we were presently investigating it. We couldn't comment any further on it, whereupon the judge looked around the room and said, is there any interest in settling this? And the buyer or the seller conceded that they would accept $32,000 if everybody packed their bags and went home and paid it today. The failed buyer expressed no interest whatsoever. And certainly we didn't, because we only recently learned exactly what the accusations were. So the judge assigned a trial date, and we then started to focus our investigation on what the insured had to say. And what he had to say was quite interesting. We pulled him in, interviewed him at length, and he was quite explicit when it came to questioning over the signature on the condition removal, to the point where he specified that he met the buyer at the buyer's shop at 3 o'clock on a specific day. The buyer's girlfriend was there, She got into the insured's car in the back. The buyer got into his car in the front. He put the DocuSign or whatever one it was that he was using on his console, and the buyer proceeded to sign it. I was sort of struck at the time that that was pretty remarkable detail, considering that this investigation has been going on for several months now. But in any event, I took that into account and we moved on. In the meantime, we had learned that the plaintiff, as in the seller, had hired a forensic handwriting expert to examine the buyer's signatures. And because we didn't have any original documents, the plaintiff was working from copies. And the handwriting expert concluded that because he did not have the opportunity to work with the originals, his findings were inconclusive, but they'll lend themselves to suggest that in fact this signature was not created by the buyer. I thought that that was a reasonably good idea. REIX Council tried to get a couple of different experts. Interestingly enough, every expert in handwriting they talked to knew about this and couldn't comment and wouldn't take it. I happen to be familiar with a fellow who had just recently retired from the RCMP as a handwriting expert, and he had been with them for 35 years. So I sent the material I had off to him, and he took a look at it and came back to me with a report that concluded that it was highly probable that the buyer did not sign this document, and highly probable in his definition of it was 80 to 90 percentile, that in fact it was a forgery. This was happening concurrent with two affidavits that I received from the buyer's lawyer, along with a copy of the buyer's cell phone records, which clearly indicated that contrary to what the insured had told me, the buyer was actually out at a campground several hundred miles away when he was allegedly, according to the insured, supposed to have signed the condition removal. There were a series of phone calls that day, and again, he had two witnesses with him, and at this point, there was red flags going off all over the place. So I called the insured back in, and I made him walk me through this entire scenario all over again. And at that point, I confronted him once he'd finished anyway, I confronted him with the buyer's cell phone bills. And then he abruptly started changing his story. Well, I guess I might have made an error, fumbling around, coming up with no cogent explanation at all. At which point I asked him for the machine that he used because I wanted to take a look at it, whereupon he promptly told me he didn't have it anymore. And he also at that point told me that he was completely paperless in the way that he conducted his practice, and he had no documents on this whatsoever. So that was all very fine and good. I let him go, and we carried on with this investigation. And the next step that I took was I found out exactly what kind of machine it was that he was using. And I called the company because the company has a archival feature as well as the ability to pull any document or any deal that has ever gone through one of their machines. And I explained to them what the process was, and I asked them if they could take a look for me, because what I was specifically interested in knowing is this particular program, and I'm not sure if they all have them, but the program that this insured was using has a 22-digit under the signature, and within that there's a GPS digit program, and that's what I was going after. So the company, on the condition of anonymity, pulled that number and pulled the GPS. And I know a little bit about navigation, and I know longitude and latitude when I see it. So we ran the long and lat, and sure enough, when this transaction occurred on this machine, it was certainly not in Calgary, it was in Las Vegas. So when you started to connect the dots, you realized, number one, it was a forgery. You realized that none of what the insured had told REIX was true. And now we obviously had a serious coverage problem. So this was early in the week that I found that out. And I deliberately waited till late on a Friday afternoon. I called the insured in. I said that here's all the evidence that I have. It doesn't jive. I don't believe you. The court's not going to believe you. I'm happy to run this trial. But at the end of the trial, if you lose, and you will, I'm going to deny coverage. You're going to pay that, the damages, the interest and costs, and I'm going to come after you for our costs. So I said, go home, talk to your wife, see what you want to do. And if you decide that you want me to try and put a bullet in this, bring me a money order for $25,000 on Monday morning. And that'll match up with what the buyer had now agreed to pay, which was $7,000. And we'll bring this to an end, which is what he did. So again, turning back to the whole purpose of this, the risk of lying, credibility, truthfulness is everything. We're pretty good at what we do. And eventually we're going to find out this fellow, as a result, didn't have to report it to REIX, because for sure they would have fined him heavily, if not given him a lengthy, if not lifetime suspension. So there you have it, folks. That concludes my presentation. And if you have any questions, I'll try and answer them. Thank you.
Hi, everybody. Dave, I don't see too many questions rolling in. So folks, if you have questions, it doesn't have to be necessarily on Dave's presentation. And I've got one that actually isn't on your presentation, Dave, but it's, what is the difference between a bachelor and a studio?
I don't know. I've never been in one.
I think in describing those, Dave, when one's doing a listing is what.
I don't know that I'd make a distinction. They're pretty much identical.
Okay. Okay. Any other questions, everyone out there? Got Dave live. You take advantage.
Yeah, I'm getting older. I may not be live for long.
Oh, can Dave speak about the security of electronic signatures? That's a good one.
Yeah, the security level, and I had no idea that so many companies offered this type of thing. And there's a huge range of securities that are available in these various programs. Some of these programs are more conducive to real estate agents, I think, than others. The shameful part of this whole thing was what I learned is his program this guy was using, and I'm afraid I'm bound by my promise to the company to not reveal who it is. But this particular program is amazing because it's archival. It is truly paperless. It doesn't matter whether you lose your machine, it's always backed up. So different machines have and different programs from different providers have different abilities and features. And so my recommendation to one, obviously REIX can't make a recommendation of one over another for obvious reasons. But what I would suggest is look at the nature of your practice, compare the features that are available on these things, and take the best one that suits the nature of your practice.
And you, though, Dave, you'd prefer physical signatures?
I always prefer digital. Yeah, digital signatures. The other thing that we learned is the problem with paperless is it's convenient. But when there are problems, and keep in mind, folks, that this was the insured that was naughty on this one, but it just as easily could have been a buyer. And without originals, the handwriting experts have told us that it's nigh on impossible to come up with a 100% determination, because one of the things that they look at is the pressure of stroke and all of this kind of stuff. And of course, on a copy, you can't do that because you don't have it.
Right. Just one last comment, and then I think we have to move on. The unsavory individual that you're speaking of, is that person continue to be licensed? I should think not.
Unfortunately, yes, they are.
Okay.
And the reason for that is because there was no finding of fact. And so there's no obligation to report that to REIX. Had I had I, been forced to run the trial, I would have been lost, and then Rika would have known about it. And at that point, it would have been probably all over for this insured. So he escaped.
All right. Okay. I think that's all the time that we have right now, folks. So we're going to thank Dave, the other volunteers, and everybody who made today's event fun and interesting. I think it was a learning experience for all of us. I know I enjoyed today enormously, and I really hope you did as well. This was our very first event of this kind, and we're thinking we might make an annual event out of it for our subscribers. So what I would really ask you to do is please take a moment and fill out just our short 3-question survey at the end of the webinar. We appreciate your feedback as it helps us plan for future events. And as always, stay tuned for more news from REIX. Thanks again, and I hope you have an awesome day.